Have you ever had a moment where you suddenly felt very small in the universe, and instead of comfort you felt a strange chill, like the world got too big for your mind to hold? And have you ever felt the opposite, a sudden rush of awe that made your whole body tingle, like existence itself was whispering something you cannot translate into ordinary words? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are stepping into a kind of reflection that can hit you so deeply it feels physical. Not because it is a scary story, but because it touches the question your mind keeps circling even when you pretend you are too busy to ask it. What is existence? And who are you inside it? Alan Watts had a way of pointing at this question so directly that people felt goosebumps, not because he was trying to impress them, but because he was aiming at the exact spot where your fear and your wonder are secretly the same thing. The two ideas we are exploring are simple to say but intense to live. First, much of our anxiety comes from the illusion that we are separate, fragile little islands in a cold ocean, and we must defend ourselves endlessly. Second, a quieter kind of peace arrives when you realize you are not an isolated thing inside existence. You are an expression of existence. The way a wave is an expression of the ocean. That shift changes how you hold fear, how you hold time, and how you hold your own identity. Now let me tell it like a story, because this is the kind of truth that becomes real only when you can feel it in ordinary life. Imagine a young man named Ryan. Ryan is not the most dramatic person in his friend group. He is the one who laughs, keeps things light, and tries not to be a problem. He does well enough in school or work. He keeps up with messages. He looks normal from the outside. But he carries a secret pattern. At night, when the lights are off and the day is over, he gets hit by sudden waves of existential fear. It starts quietly. I thought about time. I thought about death. I thought about how fast the years move. Then the body reacts as if the thought is a physical threat. Heart beats harder. Stomach tightens. Chest feels pressured. The mind begins to spiral. What is the point if everything ends? What if I am just a random accident? What if I am wasting my life? What if there is nothing behind it all? What if I disappear forever? Ryan tries the usual methods. He distracts. He watches videos. He scrolls. He eats something. He tells himself it is just overthinking. But the fear keeps returning. And the more he tries to run away, the more it grows. Like a shadow that gets bigger when you keep shining a flashlight at the wrong angle. One weekend, Ryan is hanging out with a friend named Elise. Elise is calm in a way that annoys Ryan a little, because Ryan assumes calm people are either lucky or pretending. Elise suggests they go for a late walk. The air is cold and clear. The streetlight looks off. The world feels quiet. Ryan should feel peaceful, but instead he feels exposed, as if quietness is removing his armor. As they walk, Ryan admits something he rarely says out loud. He says he sometimes gets scared thinking about existence. Elise does not laugh. She does not judge. She says she understands. And then she says something that surprises him. She says the fear can be a doorway, because fear is often the mind trying to hold something to dig with hands that are too small. Ryan asks what that means. Elise says, you are trying to hold the universe as an object, but you are not outside it looking at it. You are inside it as it is looking at itself through you. Ryan feels a little irritated. It sounds poetic. He wants something concrete. Elise says she has a recording she wants him to hear. She does not sell it like a miracle. She just says it helped her when she felt stuck. Later that night, she sends him the audio. Ryan listens in bed. The voice is Alan Watts. The tone is relaxed, playful, almost teasing. It does not sound like someone trying to scare you into believing something. It sounds like someone trying to wake you up from a serious dream. Watts begins talking about existence in a way that makes Ryan feel a strange mix of comfort and discomfort. Comfort because it feels like someone is finally naming the thing he cannot name. Discomfort because it challenges the identity Ryan has been using like a shield. The talk points toward a simple but radical idea. The separate self you think you are is not as solid as you assume. The sense of being a lonely little thinker inside a skull, looking out at a foreign universe, is a useful everyday feeling, but it is not the deepest truth. It is a perspective, not reality. Ryan pauses the recording. He feels his chest tighten. His mind wants to argue. He thinks, if I am not a separate self, then what am I? If I am not in control, then what is the point? If I dissolve this identity, will I disappear? Then he realizes that is the same fear he always has. The fear of disappearing, the fear of the void, the fear of not being able to hold on to something permanent. He presses play again. Watts keeps speaking about how people treat the world like it is happening to them, as if they are victims of existence, thrown into reality like a punishment. But he suggests another possibility, that you are not merely in the universe. You are the universe doing you, like an apple tree apples, the universe peoples, and you are one of those people, not as a mistake, as an expression. Ryan feels something like goosenstries on his arms. It is not because he suddenly believes a new story. It is because the words are touching a memory deeper than his personal memory, a kind of intuitive recognition. The body reacts when something feels true at a level below argument. Then Watts speaks in a way that changes the flavor of Ryan's fear. He suggests that the urge to control life completely is a misunderstanding. Life is not a machine you drive. It is a process you are. When you try to dominate the process, you suffer. When you learn to participate, you relax. Ryan feels a resistance. Participate sounds passive. Ryan wants to be strong, successful, and safe. But then Watts says something that makes Ryan stop. The desire to be completely safe is the desire to be dead, because living is risk, living is change, living is uncertainty. Trying to eliminate uncertainty is trying to eliminate life. Ryan feels his stomach drop because he knows it is true. The nights he panics are the nights he is demanding a guarantee that he will not lose, a guarantee that he will not die. I guarantee that everything will make sense. I guarantee that he will be protected from the nature of reality. But reality does not sign that contract. He finishes the recording and lies still. The room is quiet. The fear does not disappear instantly, but it shifts. It becomes less like a monster and more like a question. The next day, Ryan goes to meet Elise again. He tells her the recording gave him goosebumps. Elise smiles and says that reaction is common because the body recognizes when the mind stops lying to itself. Ryan does not fully understand, but he feels curious. Elise suggests a small experiment. She says, "Tonight, when the fear comes, do not run, do not distract. Sit for a minute and look directly at what is happening." Ryan hesitates. He thinks, that sounds like torture. Elise says, it only feels like torture because you keep feeding it with avoidance. If you look at it, it changes. That night, Ryan rises. He lies in bed and waits. The fear arrives like usual. I thought about time. I thought about death. The mind starts its movie, but Ryan remembers the experiment. He turns attention to the body. He notices the tightness in the chest, the buzzing in the arms, the heat in the face. He notices the thoughts, images of darkness, images of emptiness, sentences like, "You will disappear." He does not argue with them. He labels them as thoughts. Then he remembers the other idea. Maybe I am not a lonely thing confronting existence. Maybe I am existence happening. He does not force himself to believe it. He uses it like a lens. He asks a quiet question. Who is aware of this fear? He does not answer with words. He waits. The question turns attention inward, not toward more thinking, but toward the awareness that is already here. The fear is still present, but now it is seen. And something strange happens. Seeing creates space. Space reduces panic. Panic meets the feeling that you are trapped. When you see the fear as an event, it is less trapping. Ryan notices something he never noticed before. The fear changes. It pulses. It rises. It softens. It rises again. It is not a wall. It is a wave. He remembers the wave idea. A wave is not separate from the ocean. I wave is the ocean waving. If he is like a wave, then his life is not a fragile, separate object. It is a movement of the whole. This does not solve every question, but it changes his relationship to fear. The fear was built on the belief that he is alone. When that belief loosens, fear loses some of its grip. Over the next few weeks, Ryan keeps practicing. Some nights, he fails and distracts. Some nights, he remembers and stays. The important part is that he is no longer pretending the fear is proof of weakness. He sees it as a signal that he is clinging. Clinging to what? Clinging to certainty. Clinging to a permanent self. Clinging to control. Clinging to the idea that life should not change. And here is where the story deepens. Because the idea of existence does not only show up at night. It shows up in daily conflict, in relationships, in school stress, in social pressure, in the feeling of being judged. One day Ryan is in a conversation where someone criticizes him. In the past, Ryan would get defensive instantly. He would either argue or shut down. The criticism would echo in his mind for hours. It would feel like an attack on his identity. But now, he catches something. He catches the urge to defend an image. The image of being competent, being respected, being safe. He sees that image as a thought construct. And he sees that the pain is not only about the criticism. It is about clinging to the image. He pauses. He breathes. He responds more calmly, not because he is weak, but because he is less possessed by the need to protect a fragile self-story. This is where Buddhist wisdom quietly aligns with what Watts points toward. When you loosen identification with the self-story, you become freer, not numb. Freer. You can still care. You can still improve. But you are not destroyed by every shift in the external world. Ryan begins to notice another change. He feels more compassion for other people because he realizes everyone is defending a fragile self-story. People act shrewd because they are scared. People brag because they feel small. People judge because they are insecure. This does not excuse harm, but it helps Ryan respond with less hatred. And compassion matters because it changes karma in the practical sense. When you respond with hatred, you create more conflict. That conflict feeds anxiety. When you respond with clarity and compassion, you create less suffering. Less suffering means a calmer mind. A calmer mind means more wisdom. This becomes a cycle. Ryan also begins to experience moments of awe again. Not the anxious awe that feels like falling, but the open awe that feels like being held by something vast. He notices the sky. He notices trees. He notices the weird miracle of being conscious at all. He notices that life is happening without his permission, and yet he is part of it. One afternoon, Ryan is sitting outside and suddenly he feels that same goosebumps sensation again. It comes when he realizes something simple. The fact that he can ask questions about existence is itself existence expressing curiosity. The fact that he can feel fear is existence expressing sensitivity. The fact that he can feel love is existence expressing connection. If that is true, then he is not a mistake. He is a phenomenon. But Ryan's mind still has doubts. One day he asks Elise, "Okay, but what about death? I still do not like the idea of ending." Elise tells him she does not know exactly what happens after death. She does not pretend, but she suggests a different way to hold the fear. She says, "The problem is not that you will die. The problem is that you are trying to live as if you will not. That makes you waste your life protecting illusions. If you accept impermanence, you stop wasting time and you start living more sincerely." Ryan does not like hearing that, but he knows it is true. The nights he panics are the nights he is demanding immortality. The days he feels most alive are the days he forgets to demand it. So Ryan starts practicing a kind of death awareness, not as gloom, but as honesty. When he thinks of death, he does not immediately distract. He lets the thought remind him to be kind today, to apologize today, to say what matters today, to stop postponing love. This is the strange gift. When you accept that life is temporary, love becomes more precious. When you accept that time is limited, your attention becomes sacred. You stop giving your attention to meaningless drama as much, because attention is life. Ryan begins to see how many people are living in a trance. They are always somewhere else, always in the future, always in regret, always in comparison, always in performance. That trance is suffering. Watts points to waking up from that trance by realizing you are not an isolated ego in a hostile universe. You are a movement of the universe. You belong here as completely as a cloud belongs in the sky. This does not mean everything is easy. It means you stop adding extra suffering by fighting the nature of life. Ryan tries to explain this to his friend group one day, and they laugh and call it philosophical. Ryan laughs too. He does not try to convince them. He knows this kind of insight cannot be forced. It arrives when someone is ready. But one friend, quietly, asks him later, "So what did you actually do to feel less freaked out?" Ryan says, "I stopped running from the feeling. I watched it. And I stopped believing the story that I am alone." The friend asks, "How do you stop believing it?" Ryan says, "I do not stop it by arguing. I stop it by noticing awareness. I ask, who is aware of this fear? Then I feel that the fear is happening in something bigger than fear. That bigger something is the calm part." The friend looks skeptical but curious. Ryan tells him to try it once. Just once. Not as religion, just as an experiment. Now let us go deeper into what makes this so powerful. Existential fear often comes from the mind trying to treat existence like an object. The mind wants a final explanation that ends uncertainty. But existence is not an object. Existence is the fact you are here, aware, breathing, feeling, changing. Any explanation is a concept. Concepts are useful tools, but they are not reality itself. When you cling to concepts as if they will save you, you become anxious because concepts cannot carry the weight you place on them. So the invitation is to return to direct experience. Feel the breath. Feel the body. Notice thoughts as thoughts. Notice that everything arising changes. Notice that awareness is already here and does not need to be manufactured. This is close to Buddhist practice. The mind suffers because it clings and resists. When you see impermanence clearly, clinging softens. When clinging softens, suffering reduces. Watts often said things in a way that nudges you into seeing the joke. The joke is not mocking you. The joke is that the ego tries to swim by grabbing water. The more it grabs, the more it fails. The moment it relaxes, it floats. Ryan experiences this one night when fear rises again. He tries to force calm and it does not work. Then he remembers the floating idea. He stops forcing. He lets fear be there. He watches it. He breathes. And gradually it passes. This is the key. Calm is not something you squeeze out of the mind. Calm is what remains when you stop squeezing the mind. The goosebumps people feel when hearing these ideas are often the nervous system recognizing release. The body is so used to tension that release feels dramatic. Ryan starts noticing that he also feels goosebumps in moments of kindness. When he helps someone without needing credit, when he apologizes sincerely, when he listens fully. These moments feel more meaningful than any online argument, more nourishing than any shallow entertainment. He begins to understand that awakening is not just a mental insight, it is ethical. When you see you are not separate, compassion becomes logical. Harming others becomes like harming yourself, because the boundary between self and other is less absolute than you assumed. Again, this does not mean you lose individuality. It means you stop believing individuality equals isolation. Now, I want to bring this to you in the most practical way. If you sometimes feel existential fear, or anxiety about time, or panic at night, you do not need to solve the entire universe with your mind. You can train your relationship with your mind. When fear arises, do this gently. Bring attention to the body. Feel the sensations. Notice the thoughts and label them as thoughts. Ask, who is aware of this? Turn attention toward awareness itself. Remember impermanence. The fear is changing. Add compassion. Speak to yourself kindly. This is a human fear. I can stay. Then choose one small wise action tomorrow. Sleep, eat, apologize, study, walk, help, something clean. This is the path where wisdom meets compassion. Wisdom sees through the illusion of a fixed, isolated self. Compassion cares for the suffering that appears in human life. Together they create steadiness. Now let us close the story with a moment that stays in the heart. A few months later, Ryan is walking alone at night. The sky is clear. He looks up and feels the old fear flicker. The universe is big. Life is short. The mind tries to tighten. Then he stops and breathes. He feels the cool air. He listens to distant sounds. He notices the awareness that is already here. He remembers the wave and ocean image. He lets the fear be there without turning it into a catastrophe. And then he feels something else. Gratitude, not forced, real. Gratitude that he can see the sky. Gratitude that he can feel. Gratitude that he can learn. Gratitude that existence is happening at all. Through him, as him, around him. He keeps walking. The fear does not rule him. The mystery remains, but it is not an enemy. That is the deeper answer. Existence may always be mysterious, but mystery does not have to be terrifying. When you stop demanding the universe fit inside your mental fist, your hand relaxes, and in that relaxation, you feel what you were seeking all along, not certainty, presence. I want to invite you to share your experience in the comments. Have you ever felt that sudden existential fear? And what usually triggers it? And have you ever felt the opposite, a moment of awe so strong it felt like goosebumps? And what was happening in that moment? If this kind of long-form reflection helps you, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment so we can keep building a space where big questions are handled with common honesty. If you want to support deeper content, consider joining as a member. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, when fear rises, do not run from the vastness. Breathe into it. And remember, you are not a stranger in existence. You are existence. Awake.